Hello, everyone. This is Eric Pennington, and welcome to the Spirit of EQ podcast. We're glad that you've tuned in. A few things we wanted to tell you at the beginning of the show, and that's this podcast was created to be a tool to help you, primarily to discover and grow your EQ. Science and our own lived experiences confirm that the better we are at managing our emotions, the better we're going to be at making decisions, which leads to a better life. And that's something we all want. We're glad that you've taken out the time today to listen and hope that something that you hear will lead to a breakthrough. Hey, one last thing. We'd really appreciate a review on whichever platform you use to listen. And if you want to, leave some comments about what you heard today, as well as follow and subscribe. That way you won't miss a single episode as we continue this journey. And with that, the show begins. Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We've got a sunny, nice day here.
Yeah. I think spring is calling.
Yes.
At least I hope that's the case.
Well, here in Central Ohio, we call this fake spring.
Yes, fake spring. Never say die, Jeff. Never say die. So I was taking a look at some notes and in our conversation, and when I first did, before we talked, I was thinking caregiver. Wow, that really resonates because I've been playing that role with a family member here recently, specifically my son and my wife. But you're talking about a different type of caregiving, even though I know this might have some connecting points. But in general, what do you mean by a caregiver as it relates to EQ? And maybe I'll just call it an EQ caregiver.
Yeah. When we first hear the word caregiver, we normally think of something like what you were talking about, somebody that is going through a physical medical issue and you need to have a caregiver to take care of them, whether it's a nurse or a home caregiver, things like that.
Yep.
But what I'm talking about is when there's somebody in your life that is going through some kind of an emotional trauma, something that is really affecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And you try to give them the care. And I like to kind of maybe separate the word caregiver into caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving them your care.
Yeah.
You're giving them your attention. You're giving them, a part of you in this situation.
Is that kind of likened to the idea of coming alongside of someone on their journey?
Yes, it's that's a good way to put it. Yeah, you're willing to be that person that is there for them.
There for them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The idea of being a caregiver, would you say that relates as well to sharing space with them as it relates to, how would I say it, not just listening to their story per se, but kind of having a good understanding? Because I guess where I'm going with that, Jeff, is that not just in my current time, but even as I look back over time, I can think of many people who something happened that wasn't so good. I told them about it, and someone expressed some level of empathy in the moment.
Yeah.
But it was pretty clear that was going to be the last of it. Right?
Yeah, it's when we talk about empathy, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. What true empathy is, if you, let's say you're just walking into your office in the morning and you pop your head in somebody's office door and you go, "How you doing?" And they go, "Okay," and they're not doing okay, but you just walk on. True empathy is when they say that, "Okay," you maybe walk in and close the door and let's explore this. How are you really doing, kind of thing.
Yeah. And obviously there's all kinds of nuance around that, right? Because in some cases, if the person is not very open, you may have to try a different tact, right?
Right.
To approach them, versus if it's someone who's worked with you for 10 years and you've shared stories historically and they've always welcomed your overtures.
Exactly. You want it to allow this to happen. You can't force it. You can't just be the bull in the china shop and
Well, and I know this from experience that, sometimes in working with clients, there can be a great rush to, well, I want to improve my empathy, so I should just walk on in and sit down and I should tell them that I want to hear their story and I want to, and that's great on the face of it.
Right.
But not everyone is going to want that, especially if you're not sure where they're at. Meaning where you're at with you. And I would say even to a certain degree, this is really a call to evaluate the relationship.
Right.
Where does it land in the, sort of that hierarchy, that kind of thing.
You may have some people in your life that you've known for a long time that that it's okay to go in and, dude, talk to me.
Yeah. Right.
But that's going to be the exception, I believe.
And you can always ask, right? You can always ask.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's kind of the most forgotten approach, I think, in so many things is that just ask them.
Yeah, you can, Eric, I know that, you're not yourself. We can talk, would you like to talk now? Or, I'm always here.
Or, hey, Jeff, it seems like things are a little off. And I'm not trying to pry. Is there something that I can help with? Would you like to talk about it? What's going on? And I'm sure there's 3, 4, 5 other ways you can approach it.
You have to do it the way you are comfortable doing it.
And again, I will go back to really kind of get a sense about where I'm at in the relationship. For example, going back, I've known Jeff for 10 years. We've worked in the same office. We've shared stories. Okay, that's one where, to your example, hey, dude, right? But if it's Jeff who's been there 6 months, I've had some passing conversations, mostly about where are you from and how many kids or whatever.
And work stuff.
That one is going to have a totally different approach because the danger in that situation, if you come in like you know me for 10 years, I might immediately put up all the walls I can to what I perceive is to protect myself from you going places that I don't welcome you to go.
Right. Exactly. That's a very good way to put that.
Yeah. So let's talk about the warnings because I feel like maybe our audience might construe what we're doing here as trying to give clinical advice.
Okay.
So can you give us a few warnings?
First, I want to start off with these. There's 3 warnings I have, and they are not something I read in a book.
You mean there's more than theory around what you're about ready to say?
There's a reason that these warnings are there.
Okay.
Okay. I said it without saying it.
Yeah, there you go.
You're not a therapist. I mean, you might be a therapist, but this is, okay, you could be a therapist, but in this situation, what we're talking about is you're not a therapist. You're not there to diagnose mental issues or anything like that. So, and Eric and I have said this multiple times on the podcast that what we're doing with emotional intelligence is not being a therapist.
Right.
Okay. And we'll end up in with something about that too. And you need to set firm boundaries. You need to know how far can I go to this. You need to have those boundaries set before you start.
Can I stop you there on the boundaries thing?
Yeah.
I feel like boundaries are also the limits that you set based on what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Is that part of it too?
Yeah. If this turns into something that could be a trauma for you that you're not ready to deal with, it's okay to set that boundary. If it turns into they're having money issues, you might want to set the boundary of, okay, I can't be their bank. It could be a lot of different things, but know how far you're able to go comfortably.
Well, and here's an example from my own history. Because of that history from a family perspective, I had a lot of experience in visiting corrections facilities, probably a good 21 years of that, and some levels of trauma in that experience. So, Jeff, as I know you have been in prison ministry, right? And you've talked about going into prisons and the approach and the things you've done there.
Yeah.
And I've never verbalized it here, and I don't think I've even told it to you personally out there. If you ask me to, hey, why don't you join this group I'm doing, and you could maybe play some music with us, and we could be there. You'd be great at it. I would decline.
Exactly.
Because for me, there is a boundary that I can only go so far with that particular area of life. And I'm sure there could be many out there that say, but hey, wait a minute, it's different, and you could. And I'm not here to try to debate the idea of whether or not I should be able to do it or on and on. But I think it kind of connects to, if someone is looking to you, you talk about like with money.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is saying, well, you said you really care, and I'm having difficulty paying my rent, I was hoping that you could you loan me some money to do that because I'm in a tough place? Well, Jeff, if that's not something that's feasible for whatever your personal reasons are, you need to make that clear, right? Now, maybe they didn't start that way, and maybe they did. Maybe they just said, hey, I'm just really going through a difficult time financially, and I could really use some help from you, Jeff. Well, I would hope, Jeff, you're going to say, hey, I need you to understand, I do want to help. I just can't go into that area to help you.
Well, you mentioned the prison ministry. It's Kairos Prison Ministry, and we have very, very firm boundaries set before we go in. Mm-hmm. Some things that we just do not do. If someone is incarcerated and I need you to call my sister and tell her this. Nope, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
Can you take this letter out that won't get read before it gets sent out? I mean, some of these things we can end up in jail, but
sure.
But we have some other boundaries that we set before we go in, and that's perfectly fine to do that. Don't if you have to set a boundary, don't think you're being a less of a person, because like you described as, you could physically go into the prison, but if you're going into the prison with these issues, you're going to kind of be worthless in there.
Well, yeah, and which is really kind of connects to what's the reason for giving care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is not to be worthless. And the recognition that whatever my subject, your subject, whatever the bridge too far is,
mm-hmm.
it's a bridge too far. And
Right.
That's an acknowledgement up front. And for all of the Enneagram 2s out there who tend to put people in front of themselves, I know it could be especially hard for you because there's a part of you that really, really wants to help.
It's a core of who you are.
Yeah, right? But what I'm saying is, and I'm going to pull on the competency of consequential thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If I go ahead and join Jeff at that prison experience, I'm going to be worthless. Oh, well, that's not fair to Jeff and the other people in the group. So, you know what? I probably need to let him know I'm not the right person.
And also, it's not fair to the people that we're trying to care for.
To give the care. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah, great connector there. So I kind of stopped you on the boundaries. You had a third thing.
Yeah. Make sure you're ready for a commitment if you within the boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but if you are really trying to help someone, be ready that there might be a commitment that this might not be just a 10-minute conversation in someone's office. This could be, once again, set within your boundaries. It could be a year. It could, who knows how long it is.
So does the person, do you think, have, and I guess this would depend on the relationship
Mm-hmm.
potentially, the ability to ask, like, okay, based on what you said you need, based
Mm-hmm.
on what you said your situation
Uh-huh.
is, I mean, I don't know of any better way to say it. Is I don't want to sound cold, and when I say, well, how long do you need my help?
Right.
But is there some way, because I guess where I'm stumbling in my thoughts, Jeff, is, and it really has got me thinking, it's like, well, if you say, yeah, I'm committed, but the other person thinks that is translated to whenever, however, for however long,
Mm-hmm.
because I know we haven't touched on it yet, but giving care is not easy work.
No, and that's that goes back into your boundaries, because those boundaries may be, okay,
A time commitment? Could that be part of the boundary? Is that what you mean?
it's not a time, if I don't have you helped by Tuesday, I'm done. You don't say it that way,
Right.
but this is in the internal boundary. You're okay, Eric. You and I have been talking about this for a year,
Yep.
and it doesn't seem to make any difference.
A la quasi I'm not sure I'm being of any help to you.
Right,
in this
exactly. That's a
situation.
good way to say it, and that's where, like we said before, I'm not a therapist. That's the point where you may go, you need to find somebody better equipped than I am.
Mhm. Or have you given the thought?
Have you, given the thought to,
Yeah.
okay, I'll still be your friend. I'll still be here with you, but this is the point where,
Well, what do you say to the person? And I don't want to get into typecasting Enneagram numbers, but what do you say to the person? I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to hurt their feelings by saying that I don't have any more to give. What do you say to them? Now you're on the spot, Jeff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
you're talking to a 9. If you guys don't know what a 9 is.
Wait a minute, where did Jeff go?
The 9 is the peacemaker, okay?
So would you? No, okay, that's a good point, though. Would you say then you would have the tendency to potentially go, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I'll keep doing it.
If I'm not paying attention to me.
Right, being an integrated 9 or being a healthy 9.
Healthy 9.
Yeah.
If you get to the point, and once again, it's like what we were talking about before. If you get to the point where this is not beneficial, that's when you need to gently say, and I'm not going to make it. It's not like doing a breakup. It's not me, it's you, or not you, it's me.
Right.
Don't do that business.
Yeah.
But let them know you're not thinking anything worse of them. That you're not thinking they're a bad person. But say it in a way that I've reached my limit of what I can do for you.
Yeah, and you know what, too, Jeff. As I know and for the audience, there is no perfect way to say it, because every human being is different. All of us are very different. One of the things that I did hear once from Simon Sinek was, it's okay to tell the person that I'm not sure how to tell you this. I'm afraid that I'm going to just really butcher it, but I know it needs to be said.
Right.
So I just want to in advance I hope you'll forgive me if it doesn't land exactly like I'm hoping it'll land. And I thought, how profound, because that doesn't guarantee you anything, but at least it kind of, I would think it would lighten your load as having to give that information to the other person. Because I think if someone came to me and said, hey, Eric, I've really been wrestling with this, and I'm kind of afraid that what I'm going to say is not going to go over well, but I know I need to talk about it, and I'm just really hoping that you'll receive it well. So here's what I need to say. I'm probably going to go, well, man, this person was humble enough and thoughtful enough to not just come in and just drop the bomb or whatever it is. And I know I don't know what they're going to say, but
they're trying not to hurt me.
And they're making it clear that their intention is not to hurt.
Exactly.
Versus, I think, if it's been a year and I go, Jeff, I need to talk to you. I can't do this anymore. You might want to consider that. And once again, I just really want to stress to everyone, there is no perfect way to say this stuff. There's no perfect. So I'm not giving you a script that's going to guarantee it's going to work. And if you just say it this way, Simon Sinek or whoever else, I'm just throwing out ideas and ways that resonate with me.
There is another way to look at it. The person that you're telling this to might go, I feel the same way, and I didn't want to hurt you because you're not helping me.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea of being ready, the last point was being ready that there might be a commitment. Is there another? I'm thinking about the value of counting the cost, right? The idea that, okay, I really want to help them. I want to be someone who gives them care. am I good with what that implies?
Yeah, and you have to look at everything else, I think, that's going on in your life at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, by helping this person, am I going to be taking away from my family? Am I going to be hurting myself?
Yep.
That's an important part of it too, because you need to be healthy to help someone that's unhealthy.
Right. And I know we haven't talked about it, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit as we talk about competencies and things like that. But I think it's also important to note that even with your best intentions and your best selection of words to communicate, the person may not receive it well, right? They may not be happy about what you're going to say to them or the action that you're planning to take.
Right.
I would just, the key thing is being able to, with a clear conscience, that I did the best I could in trying to communicate this point or these points.
Exactly.
And to be able to live with the reality that some might think you're harsh. Some might think you are not caring. But what's the old saying? It's none of my business what you think of me. I mean, and I know that's easy to say in a podcast episode.
Right.
Right. But when it's someone whom you care a lot about, or if it's someone whom you have a great deal of respect for, or fill in the blank, easy to say, right?
Right. None of this is easy. If you're truly trying,
which I think should be factored in to the level of your commitment, the idea that, okay, you're not, because, I think one thing that leaps out to me too, Jeff, and you haven't said it directly, is this idea that, when we feel that emotion, right? A la, I feel empathy for this person. It's easy to go ahead and just jump on into the deep end of the pool.
Right.
Right. Because it does feel that way, right? If you say you're in need and I feel like I can help you, I want to go, yes. But I think what I hear from you is that's acknowledge that feeling. It's giving you good data there, but you also need to employ, well, let me weigh this.
We're talking about outward directed empathy. You need to be sure you're using your inward directed empathy, your self-empathy, that if you do feel, okay, I've reached my limit, that's okay. That does not make you a bad person. That's actually a good thing to know that you've reached your limit, and then to know that I'm not bad because of this. I didn't fail because of this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's key because, Jeff, as I gave you the example about the prison thing, I can't walk out of here from our recording today and go, I should be a better person. I should be strong enough. I should be. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. And I think far too many people apply this weight on their shoulders that was never designed for them.
The healthiest I ever heard anybody, and this is definitely for the prison thing, was a fellow that I went to church with. And he looked at me, he goes, Jeff, I don't even like driving by a prison, but I know what you're doing is important. So these are the things I am going to do to support you, but don't expect me to ever step foot in there.
Right. And I'm sure I'm going to point this to our culture. Our culture would want to point out to him, how could you say that? Those people need support. They need care. They need rehabilitation. And you could play such a great role in it. You are a this and that and a this and a that. And I used to be in that crowd. I'm now in the other crowd, the one that goes, wow, that's great that you have the awareness to know what you can and cannot do.
And the things that he did for this ministry were just as important as and I look at it this way, the ones of us that were blessed to be able to go in, he did all the other things. Raised money for us. Put prayer lists, all these other things that have to happen for this ministry. But he had the awareness. If he would have went in one time, had the horrible experience, I'm sure he would not have wanted to do anything.
Yeah, sure.
So him being aware of this was an unmeasurable amount of support for me.
Well, and I think not necessarily relating to him because I don't know him, but I think in general, the more we're able to authentically know what does work and what does not work for ourselves, the better we are to humanity as a whole.
Right.
And this is coming from someone who did things years and years and years ago because I thought I should do them. Right. And I thought, well, it's what is expected. This is the norm. And I can say after many years of having that in my rear view mirror, wow, I'm glad I didn't get to a place of where it was too late for me to turn it around. And I think this speaks to it. And you know what, Jeff? If somebody says to someone else, well, I'm so disappointed that you're not willing to do this, I will validate that you have a right to feel disappointed. And now back to the episode. And we'll be back to the episode after this. Jeff, what is the SEQ Development Report?
I'm glad you asked me that, Eric. The SEQ Development Report is something that we here at Spirit of EQ have developed to blend the idea of emotional intelligence with a person's spiritual life. And we're not talking about religion, we're talking about how they connect with themselves, other people, and the world around them.
Why is it important?
I think it's important because it allows someone to see where they stand, to give them information about maybe parts of their life they may need to work on, parts of their life that they're really doing well and learn to leverage it. And it just gives a person a better way of getting through the world.
So how do you get this report?
Well, first, you need to contact us. Info at Spirit of EQ is just a great way to do it. Then you would take an assessment, 15, 20 minutes, done online. And then after that, the report requires a debrief to go through all the things in it because it's got a ton of information. And then if you want to further your journey, we can do coaching and things like that with you down the road. And that's basically it.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff.
I had to struggle with someone at the same church. They had a very strong nursing home ministry. That's the prison for you. That's for me. Going into nursing home, that is just something that is very difficult. And I don't think they never did understand why I couldn't do that, no matter what I tried to explain, or why it would not be a good idea for me to do this.
Yep.
And I don't think they ever reconciled. Well, you go into prison, do you like those guys more than?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry too, Jeff, because here's a flash warning for you.
Yeah.
Miles Davis story coming your way.
All right.
I haven't done this in a while.
No.
I've kind of held back. So Miles Davis, before he died, it was actually, I think he died not more than a few months after. He gave a performance in Montreux, the Montreux Jazz Festival. And he performed with Quincy Jones and this large orchestra, right? And they were doing all kinds of songs from like Kind of Blue, Miles Ahead, Sketches of Spain, that kind of thing. That era.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I don't know if you know this or not, but Miles was kind of the mind, I'm not playing that music again. And for years and years, decades, if you went to see him play live, he would not play songs from that era. Miles's approach was, I've already done that. He was always kind of looking ahead to what could be next, right? But he did it. He made this exception. I won't get into the details as to what the story goes as to why he decided this time around. But I think it's important that even with him deciding to do it again, which, by the way, it's a fantastic record, just a fantastic record. But his ability to go, yeah, Jeff, I could play songs from Kind of Blue, but I don't want to. It's not where I'm at. This is not, it's not who I am. And I admire that so much because that sort of forceful, I know what I can and I know what I can't. I know what I will and I know what I won't.
Right.
It just, as we're talking about it, I'm going, this is inspirational to the idea of, and I think if you are going to be that caregiver, these are the things to be considered. So I took you off on the Miles tangent. I'm going to bring us back. And let's talk about one of your top things is leading with empathy. What does that mean? What does that look like?
We've talked a lot about it, but don't lead with the "I'm sorry you feel that way," which is, if you say "I'm sorry," to me that always seems like that's putting you in a superior position. I'm sorry you're going through that, but I'm glad I'm not.
Okay.
But the true empathy, you and I've talked about it. That little short Brene Brown animated thing.
Yes.
Just you put yourself beside the person. You just are there. Is the most important thing, I think, with the empathy. Empathy doesn't judge or anything like that. That's not what you're there for. So just be willing to show empathy.
Yeah, because part of the definition of it is appropriately responding to emotions, right? The one that we use for our model.
Right.
And I think that really sort of levels the playing field, right? What's my appropriate response to an emotion in myself and with another person?
Yeah, so I think that's important. And I think the next thing is use your emotional literacy. When we talk about these competencies, we always kind of make them self-directed, but pay attention to use your emotional literacy with this person. Try to see as best you can, what are they actually feeling? Where are they at emotionally?
So does that come from asking them the question?
It could be. It could be directly asking them, but it's also just observation. I've been married, will be 48 years, and I'm pretty good at reading Michelle's emotions. But, somebody that you're maybe not quite that familiar with, just see what you can pick up.
I would throw out to you, Jeff, even in long-term relationships, it's always a healthy idea to, and I don't want to say that you always have to ask, but I think there should always be a level of curiosity of what this person could be feeling. And unless you, and again, I don't want to rob you or anyone else out there that has a long-term relationship and you're at a place where you're kind of going.
Well, what I didn't say was when I'm paying attention.
No. Okay. All right. Well,
I even got our producer grinning.
Yeah. Here's what's interesting, right, Jeff? Okay. And this was many, many years ago. I've been married for quite a while. I remember having a very heated disagreement with my wife, and she starts to cry. She's tearing up, and and I thought at the time, oh my gosh, you've hurt her feelings. I mean, she's crying and she's walking away. So I'm thinking, my gosh, I need to apologize for hurting her feelings. I didn't intend to do that. And you know what I discovered?
What?
Her tears were not tears of hurt feelings.
Yeah.
Her tears were of anger. She's an angry crier. Right? Now, if I had made the assumption, and again, please, for our audience, I'm not saying that Jeff is wrong for knowing how his wife might feel. That's not my point here. My point is there should be a balance.
Right.
It's like a dance, right? If I would have just stayed in that mode and not recognized and not queried, I would have thought this is hurt feelings. And you know what I found out over time, Jeff? There's more than a few people I've met over that. Yeah, when I get angry, I start to cry. It's that deep of an emotion. It triggers that.
I'm one.
Okay, there you go. Well, I didn't realize that I was talking to a member of that club, but you get it, right? But it's easy, Jeff, right? For me to say something to you and be, pound the table. It's Jeff, and if you wouldn't have, and then start to see you cry, and then I could go, oh my gosh.
Then you're also getting to the backed up are backed into corner 9 going at the same time.
Yeah, which that's for another episode, maybe,
Yes.
right? So I at least wanted to I wanted to kind of to go into that, and I think it doesn't just apply to emotions
Right.
and the emotional literacy. I think in general we far too often we forget. Jeff, did you mean that when you said that?
Mhm.
Jeff, when you said no Saturdays, does that mean every Saturday? Jeff, what if I said I could do this? Would that change anything?
Right.
Question. Just question.
Mhm.
And as long as there's at least some level of
Mhm.
relationship,
Right.
Jeff will say, well, no, I didn't mean that. I just meant this.
Mhm.
Or, yes, Eric, it can't be Saturdays. I just don't have the bandwidth on Saturdays.
Right.
But I think so often, Jeff, what do? We assume
Mm-hmm.
I bet Jeff doesn't have Saturday available. I'm gonna go ask my producer. He's probably got Saturdays open.
I mean,
Did
he just sits over there.
Right. Yeah, he's doing nothing. Right. Hey, but you know what, too, Jeff, and I've seen this in coaching relationships. A client might make a series of, well, this happened, and then they did this, and then when we were in that situation, they said that, and then it made me feel like this, and then I'll ask them, did you ever query as to, is that what they meant?
Mm-hmm.
And without fail, not every person. A lot of times I get, no, I didn't.
Didn't think of that.
I didn't ask them. Well, it's not condemnation. It's just add that to your repertoire. Add it. Another tool in your box is you can ask. If you're wondering, are they crying because they're angry or hurt feelings? Ask them. If you're wondering if the body language is communicating, just ask them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not responsible if they're not going to be honest in their response.
Right. You're talking about actively listening to them.
And I think that's a good segue. Well, actually, you want to talk about optimism first, right?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm out of line.
That's
Out
all
of
right.
order.
You're not. You can do whatever order you want, Jeff.
You need to be very aware of being overly optimistic.
Oh, okay. I got that wrong. So yes.
Yeah. One of the competencies that we use in our model of EQ is optimism. You don't want to turn into a cheerleader and say everything is going to be fantastic.
Does that move into toxic positivity?
Yeah, and I've used this example before. Your college football team is down 28-0, and there's 2 minutes left, and you got the cheerleaders cheering. Why?
Or maybe worse, at least in my mind,
Yeah.
is when you're down 28-0 with 2 minutes left, and there's somebody at that get together that says, "I just know if we just throw the ball and then we can kick an onside kick, and then that'll give us 30 seconds. Hey, by the way, did you know Patrick Mahomes? He won a championship game in 13 seconds. We could do that." And you're kind of looking at him going, "What
are you talking about?"
So, to your point,
trying to think of the right way to say it, but use optimism, but in a way that is not giving false hope.
Yeah, and when you say that, Jeff, I think, and I've used this in many situations, that we should acknowledge this is a deep hole.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. I think that validates the person who's
Mm-hmm.
in that deep hole. Like, I get it. It's a deep hole. And then you can say, but, here's some things that I think are going well. Here's some things that I think we could do. Here's
Mm-hmm.
ways I can help. But I agree with you. This sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's a blend. It's almost like blending it with realism.
Yeah. A lot of people have a negative response to the word pragmatic, but I like that word because it's honest.
Right.
Being pragmatic does not mean that you think this, it's all going to turn out bad. You're just looking at the situation in a realistic way is how I look at pragmatism.
Yeah.
And so just make sure you're looking at whatever the situation is this way. I mean, they may never totally recover from something.
Yep. Yep.
But you might be the person that is going to help them cope rather than resolve.
Cope and navigate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I think in the end, we realize that as much as I think as human beings, we desire so much safety, security, and predictability, this idea that I think it's healthy to, when you face the reality that it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is, this is something that you're going to grapple with.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm here to support and to give care in whatever way I can as you are navigating all
Mm-hmm.
of the twists and turns that this implies.
And know that no matter what, I'm not going to think less of you.
Yeah. That's powerful. So what about the listening thing?
We did an episode in the past about active listening, but just make sure that you pay attention to that. I think one of the worst things when you're talking with someone, when you're trying to be that caregiver, is to do something I like to call the Me Too-isms. Oh, I know exactly how you feel. I went through that myself, and you can share that later on, but you don't want to make it like, oh, I'm better because I've got through this. Why haven't you gotten through it?
Sure. Yeah, because that communication can be deadly, if you will.
But and then you mentioned some of those before. Ask questions, pay attention, body language. I think one of the highest compliments I think I've ever gotten from anybody is, you're a good listener. I think that's one of the compliments I hold dear to my heart, that somebody saw that I was actually paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And you don't know how much just that in itself is going to help the person.
Yes, no doubt. I think there's a craving in just about everyone to be heard.
You mentioned the prison ministry. I think that's the biggest thing we do for the residents that we see in the prison, is we listen to them.
Yeah. When you think about this idea of listening, I think it's also probably a healthy defense against judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think, and this is just recently, right? And judgment, yes, we can leap to the conclusions about racism and the moral thing, and all of those religious connections. But I think it also relates to the judgment that we pass on people whom we have not listened to enough to get the data to make a conclusion as to what or who, et cetera, right? So I had interacted with this guy on a very limited basis. I had more interactions with his wife than him, but I would see him, in his wife's company, and it would be to say things. He was always very kind, and I knew what work he did, and I really kind of I didn't dismiss him, but I kind of thought, oh, he's just that. And then 2 weeks ago, he's talking about something that left me going, wow, I didn't know that about that. And I didn't understand. He has a wealth of knowledge that I didn't even know. Now you could say, but Eric, you haven't done this with him and you haven't done that. You shouldn't. Well, Jeff, then maybe I should reserve my determination of who he is if I don't have enough data.
You know how helpful that would be for our world right now?
Well, and that's a difficult one for people to stomach, especially if you are a type of person who is judgmental. And keeping in mind, everyone, judgment does not just rest in the laps of religious people. Judgment is everywhere. It's rampant, right? And when I think about that, I go, and I'm talking about, from the perspective of what I'm working on, is to less and less make a mental judgment about someone whom I have either limited knowledge of Or what's even worse, and we see this all the time, we make judgments and we've never met the person in our life.
Have you ever made a judgment of the person in the car next to you?
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've got that story already.
Right. And I've used this in other settings. I don't think I've ever mentioned it on the podcast. And this was around election time here in the United States. And I tend to love hearing from both sides of the equation, right? Persons on both sides, you know, they're railing about their opponent. I mean, they're this, they're that, they're this, they're that, they're this and this and that. And on both of them, Jeff, I just went, so tell me, how long have you known Joe Biden? Silence. Well, I was just wondering, because, you know, it would seem to me you really got to know them in order to really kind of make a judgment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of important. And I did the same. So how many interactions have you had with Donald Trump? So the bigger point is those that run inside of our world. Let's not be so quick. And I think when we do that, it sets us up to be that better listener. It sets us up to go, oh, I'm meeting with Jeff again. I'm being his caregiver, but he's going to complain about his wife. He's going to complain about his work. And then, you know, and then he'll probably ask me, do I have any advice? And, you know, we'll probably be there for an hour and a half. I'd like it to be an hour because I really have other things I need to get done today. Judgment, 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 judgment. And we can get away with that one, right? We can easily rationalize that one away. But the reality is, if I need to leave early from our time together, I can just say, hey, Jeff, I've only got an hour today. I just want to let you know that so that, you know, like when we get to 2:00 or whatever, and I say, hey, I got to go, you'll know.
And you know what? It's also okay to go, Eric, I know we had set this time together to talk about what you wanted to talk about. I am not in the frame of mind to be able to do that today. I'm sorry, but you know, maybe we just want to have a cup of coffee and chat. But I've had some things happen today that put me. Be honest about this.
Yeah, and the responsibility is a shared one. And what I mean by that is that if it happens that on that particular day, whatever, that is the case, in the relationship, you have the responsibility to tell me that it's not in you today. And it's my responsibility to extend grace to you that, well, yeah, Jeff, I get it. I understand that. Now, if someone could say, well, what if Jeff does that like on a regular basis? Well, then it's probably time for another conversation. Like we were talking in the beginning. Is this really what I can really give to this person?
Right.
Can I really be a caregiver? Should I, maybe I need to exit versus just staying in that rinse and repeat mode where just frustration builds and builds and builds.
I don't want to be seen as a quitter.
On and on and on and on. I don't want to appear like I am this. It's a fascinating circle. What else? Anything else today about that?
The one thing I just want to reiterate, and we were kind of talking about at the end, don't be afraid to say, okay, this is beyond what I can do. You need to see a professional. And don't be afraid to say that. And, you know, don't make sure you say it in a way that's not going to make the other person feel bad because they're so messed up that they have to go see a professional. That's not what. No, you need to be honest and say, this is beyond what I can help with. This is beyond my boundary. We're getting into things that I don't know about, that I cannot answer for you. And do not be afraid to say that. But once again, make sure you say, I'll still walk with you. You can share whatever you want from, if you want to share what you're talking about with the professional, that's fine. I'm not expecting it, but just say, I am going to continue to walk with you. I'm still going to give you care.
Yeah. That's a powerful note. And I think it also is a call for us to remind the audience and maybe ourselves, Jeff, that the things that we have and are experiencing in our lives are shared by many. So our mischaracterization, if not butchering characterization of therapy, like we've done in the United States, and I'm optimistic that it seems like we're turning that corner a bit, but we did a lousy job because we made people feel like there's something deeply wrong with you. You're flawed.
You're one step away from getting put in an institution if you see a professional. Right.
Or to the idea like, well, the stigma thing, right? Okay, like somebody's putting a red letter on your forehead or something. I think we should all remember that, your struggles may have a different hue to them, but they're still the struggles in every human being. And by the way, if you have someone that says they're not, they're lying to you.
Exactly.
Everyone, we appreciate you tuning in today.
Yes,
and
we
we
do.
look forward to the next time that we're together. Take care. Hi, everyone. This is Eric Pennington with the Spirit of EQ. I'm not introducing a new episode today. I'm here to tell you some things that might help you. Jeff, you're with me as always. So
Yes.
How do people get in touch with us?
Well, the best way is just send us an email at info@spiritofeq.com.
That's awesome. Jeff, I was also thinking about reviews, and I'm notoriously bad at asking for them. So reviews on all of the platforms, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
Do you think that'd be good?
I think that would be great because, one, that will help us learn how to make better ones. And it's always good for us
So
to hear.
we're not the perfect podcast hosts?
We're close.
Okay, all right. But
not,
still,
not totally
we want your
perfect.
feedback. We want your feedback.
But it also might let us know a new subject. Hey, we need to dig deeper into that.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think.
Cool. We really appreciate that. As always, too, there is social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we also have a YouTube channel. Those also have mechanisms or options for you to be able to leave a comment, a like, or those kind of things. Just want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. Right, Jeff?
Right. We appreciate you all.
Thank you. Once again, we really appreciate you tuning in today. One of the things that Jeff and I want to bring to your attention as well is that when we created this podcast, it was not intended to take the place of a clinician. In other words, if you find yourself in a place where there's something deeper going on or something that you cannot solve on your own, we do recommend that you reach out to a clinician of some sort. This podcast is purely opinion-based, and it is rooted in the desire to help you along your path in whatever way we can. However, it is never going to replace, nor should it ever be looked at as a replacement for clinical help in any way. Thanks again for tuning in.